Deterrence crisis is coming. The recent sale of the IDWS system to India is a game changer that will destroy Pakistan's aircraft-based nuclear deterrent. The AF restores that balance. The status quo puts us on a path to nuclear conflict via miscalculation, land grabs, or proxy agent attacks. Any of these could escalate to Indo-Pak nuclear exchange. That risks over 100 million instant deaths, global mass starvation, and probable extension of life at every level of the ecosystem. First, I'll address the they miss the trees for the forest or whatever argument. They say that IDWS isn't the cause of competition, but all of our evidence specifically talks about how IDWS is the critical hole in India's defense shield and therefore operates and gives them the ability to have counterforce capabilities. The first argument on case with the re-highlight doesn't make a solid argument. The S-400 doesn't send the same signal as IDWS. The S-400 is also a high-altitude, long-range weapon that doesn't pose a threat to Pakistani F-35s and Mirage fighters as per 1AC Roblin. The Akash system also only has medium-range capabilities, meaning that the indigenous capacity can't fill in for the US, and they also make the argument about the IDWS only covering New Delhi while Pakistan could attack other civilian centers. New Delhi would have to be the main target as the military and political center for India. If they weren't to strike New Delhi, then they'd understand that New Delhi still has full counterforce capabilities after a Pakistani strike. Third, they try and re-highlight the Lalwani evidence, but all it does is prove our arguments. As IDWS are the uniquely destabilizing scenario, their highlighting only proves that mutually assured destruction will continue to be true so long as India doesn't have complete counterforce capabilities. They also haven't answered the fact that Sentinel radars from IDWS are key to detecting Pakistani planes as per and the 1C, which uniquely means that we access a complete inroads to counterforce, and the Roblin and Hussein evidence prove that IDWS systems will be destabilizing to Pakistan's deterrent. The Lalwani and Dalton and Kalwani evidence also prove that the new deterrence instability ramps up the likelihood of conflict and miscalculation by creating a use it or lose it mentality in Pakistani military leadership. It also pushes Modi to be the aggressor, sparking an Indo-Pak war, which will have with multiple scenarios for conflict. On to T substantial. We reasonably meet the IDWS system costs 1.9 billion. That's live mint to 1620. The American government approved IDWS for around 1.9 billion under foreign military sales, and substantially means of considerable amount, not some contrived percentage. That's prost 4. The word substantial generally means considerable in amount. It does not imply a specific number or cutoff, and substantially means large but does not require precision. That's Hartman 7. The word substantial is not a word that lends itself to a precise measurement. To say that there has been a substantial increase is a statement to the effect that it is certainly more than a little but less than great. It defines a significant increase, one that is weighty or sizable, and you should prefer our interpretation. First, this is the last debate on the topic. What precedent are we setting for the topic? They've clearly read links and done research that is specific for our AF. Second, our interps still allows adequate clash. There's tons of literature about Indian weapon sales and especially our system, considering the deal went through in February. They also say that we shouldn't defend single types of weapons, but we don't defend every single make and model. Just large enough systems that have specific literature means that the literature base checks back, since our solvency evidence is specific about IDWS. And the neg mixes burdens. Substantial modifies reduce direct commercial sales and foreign military sales, not arms. Their interpretation requires we prove solvency to win T, which is untenable. And the over-limiting disad, their interpretation limits out every soft left AF on the topic and brings it down to practically only Saudi. And plan text and the vacuum checks means no ground loss. They still get links to topic generic disads, politics, and picks, and reasonability. Our scenario is specific. We have a high percentage, and we're 10% of sales to India. Good is good enough here, and competing interpretations just lead to a race to the bottom onto the counterplan. First, framing issue. Their evidence doesn't assume the increased Indian aggression in the SWO or the sale of the IDWS. Rejected on face because it doesn't assume the complex geopolitical structure. And perm do the counterplan. The counterplan is plan plus. And perm do both. And the counterplan doesn't solve. First, the IDWS solves Indian intelligence. COMCASA doesn't matter to India after they receive American weapons because the IDWS system is the most complex intelligence machine that the US sells, means that they don't have leverage. Second, our scenario is based off Pakistani escalation. We don't have to win that India completely launches an offensive attack or full-scale counterforce. Just that Pakistan fears that India is counterforcing them, and that creates any chance for a miscalculation, which means that the counterplan doesn't solve those scenarios. Third, India strikes anyway. Rising Hindu nationalism inside India pushes Modi to escalate a war even if the US doesn't support it and signals that support to them. Fourth, they don't have any evidence on how India would respond to the counterplan. Don't buy their warrantless claims. And threatened counterplans are bad and a reason to reject the team. They're infinitely regressive and steal all of AF prep. They'll always be ahead on the say yes debate because they have infinite prep on their condition and can just read arguments that say that they pressure the other countries into saying yes. That destroys topic-specific education and clash and is a voter for fairness education. Onto the China appeasement dissent. First, case outweighs and turns a dissad. A quick escalation between India and Pakistan draws in China because of the Sino-Pak alliance, which outweighs their geopolitical shift, which takes decades. And uniqueness all goes after. The IDWS system hasn't been delivered yet, so if SQUO deterrence solves Chinese aggression, then you vote AF to maintain the current deterrent strategy. And no weapons link. India already has long-range BMD systems. Those solve any Chinese incursions. That's Philip 20. India's BMD program is complete to secure the country from incoming missiles. The successful test of ASAT was a big boost because intercontinental ballistic missiles like China's travel through space. The BMD works on two levels, endo-atmospheric and exo-atmospheric. Pakistan had last year claimed that it has the capabilities to counter the BMD. And there's no signaling link for multiple reasons. First, India's bid for the IDWS has been rejected before, so either the link should have already been triggered or the thesis of the DECIDE is false. Second, other forms of the alliance check. Trade deals, diplomatic efforts, and cooperation over other issues all thump the link. The AF is minorly relative compared to the overall alliance structure between the US and India. And a recent $3 billion helicopter deal directly counters China. That's Kugelman 4620. U.S.-India security cooperation remains strong. New Delhi purchased $3 billion in defense equipment, included Army and naval helicopters. Naval helicopters will enhance India's naval modernization efforts and boost New Delhi's sea-based power projection capacities and sea power and overall influence in China. And every instance of allied weakness should thump the DISAD. First, North Korea thumps the DISAD. They blew up a South Korean embassy and are ready to deploy troops. If China puts pressure on any of our allies, it's South Korea. That's NOAC 616. Tuesday, Pyongyang threatened to move forces into the demilitarized zone, blew up their joint liaison office. It betrayed hopes of peace. The liaison office was a key element to broaden cooperation. North Korea may be seeking to exert pressures on South Korea and the United States. Last week, North Korea said it would cut phone hotlines. Next, Japan is a second target. They're just as spooked over North Korea. That's Kyodo News 616. Abe does not want to see further escalation in North Korea. We will firmly coordinate with the United States in dealing with the situation. And no escalation. China is a responsible stakeholder. Increase engagement establishes costs against aggression. That's Chan 18. China assumed a more active and constructive role in international organizations. The U.S. turned against multilateralism. This evidence suggests conclusively a greater stake and more extensive engagement inclined Beijing to become a responsible stakeholder. A rising power does not necessarily present a greater threat. On the contrary, its increased stake can influence it to become more committed to the prevailing order. China's AIIB played a complementary instead of substitutive role. Go back to the advantage. The Pakistani strike on India didn't escalate. The Pakistani strike on India from yesterday didn't escalate due to our thesis of MAD. Extend the Guruswamy evidence here. Mutually assured destruction means that small-scale skirmishes like that in the status quo won't escalate, but indicate that IDWS will allow for India to escalate post those conflicts due to having a complete counterforcing capability. Means that doesn't thump any chance of the impact, and only bolsters and proves our theory of mutually assured destruction about how the countries interact, understanding that in small scenarios like that, they won't escalate due to both countries' ties, but allowing for IDWS will allow India to escalate back and forces Pakistani into a situation where they have to respond to any perceived Indian threat with a full-scale attack because they understand that they're in a use it or lose it situation. I have like 20 seconds. Oh, did I not? And the US-Indian alliance is stronger than ever regardless of arms sales, and Modi expects quick changes in US foreign policy, means India won't flip out. That's Mohan 519. Along with bilateral trade, Delhi has opened up to interoperability between the armed forces, counter-terror collaboration, and political cooperation. Substantive opposition came from the bureaucratic establishment. I'll send that card out.